William Gifford, Hillendale.
Here.
Michael Berman, Main Street.
Here.
Bill Daniels, McLaughlin. Alice Watts is excused. Nancy Crushauer, Public Works.
Here.
Tom Gile, Park Place.
Here.
Steve Van Heverbeek, Park Place.
Here.
Bruce Danielson, Rivercrest. Patty Brown, Rivercrest. Ingra and David Rickenbach are excused. Steve Tam, Tower Vista. Scott Young, Tower Vista. That completes the roll call.
So that's our neighborhood representatives and city representatives. We also try to meet who's here present from in the audience. And so if you would please just kind of introduce yourselves. If you're just here as a citizen watching, that's fine. Just say that too. But please introduce yourselves. Hey, Tony, we passed by you. And
Tony Conkle, Community Development Director.
Nancy Bush, Code Enforcement Manager.
thanks.
Pete Walter, Associate Planner.
From where? What neighborhood do you know?
Do you know your neighborhood at all? Okay. Yeah, behind you?
Derek Lee with Oregon City Water.
Terrific.
Eli Deberry, Oregon City Water.
Okay.
John Burrell, Oregon City Public Works Project Manager.
God, we got the whole city here tonight. Go ahead. Next.
Scott Young, Tower Vista neighborhood.
We know Rachel?
Barry Mogul, a citizen from Tower Vista.
Okay.
Charles Kewell, citizen of Tower Vista.
Okay.
On the commission.
Linda Kidwell, Tower Vista, citizen. Lauren, citizen,
Wow. A lot of Tower Vista. That's great. Thank you. The way we conduct our meetings is we allow the presentations to go first so they can complete it in a good time and allow everyone to answer questions. And then from that, we'll go into approval of minutes, old business, new business. Tonight, we were told that the not remote control, but the remote mic is not working appropriately. So if you do have questions, this is being recorded by Willamette Falls, thank you. And so they would like you to step up to the microphone if you have a question later on in the evening, if you have something to say. Okay, thanks. So first, let's start with, is it new library update? Is that the first one? Mm-hmm. So please come on up and, is there? Okay, Don's over there, okay.
I'm dual.
And what was the time on this one, Chris?
7 minutes with 3 minutes for questions.
We do try to time these. We're trying to keep our meetings somewhat tight on schedule so that you don't have to spend 2 to 3 hours here. So that's why we asked about the time, 7 minutes and then 3 minutes of questions.
Say go. Go. Okay, my name is Don Wright. I'm with the Barkley Hills Neighborhood Association as one hat. I'm also a member of the Oregon City Library Board as another hat. And for the past 5 months, we have been looking for a site for a new library to replace the Carnegie or augment the Carnegie. We're not quite sure yet. And we have made an offer to the Clackamas County Board of Supervisors for a piece of property which is on the back part of the first page there, which is right across from where they have the farmers market. I think you're all pretty well aware of that. Interestingly enough, it's right off of Library Court, which is one of the streets that was previously named there. But it's a lovely piece of property. The county has received our order, but we haven't received any kind of a negotiation yet, and we hope that will come out soon. What we need from the CIC, I'm sure you can read all of these words and make your own decision, but what we need from the CIC is perhaps some vote of confidence that this would be a good site, or to ask the supervisors as a group, as a bunch of neighborhoods, say, please, let's move forward with this, because even if we got approval, I think they said in the next week, it would still take 2.5 to 3 years to build the library with planning and construction. So we're looking 13 before we get a new library. I believe the Carnegie was built in, what, 1911, 1912? So we're just about up to the 100-year mark for a library. We're due for a library here in Oregon City. I don't see her. There was a lady that came to the Friends of the Oregon City Library, which is, we just kind of support. We just have the bookstore over here, and we raise a little bit of money for kids and books and stuff. But she attended a meeting at the West Lynn Library for college recruiters, because her son wanted to get into an engineering school, and the recruiters were at the West Lynn School, and he went over there to fill out the forms, and they said, well, I'm sorry, we can't accept your form. And why? He says, well, you don't have a working library in Oregon City. And the mother says, no, we have the Carnegie. He says, no, that's just a drop-off and a pickup site. You don't have a regular, full-bore library. So, right or wrong, the perception out there is getting to be that we're a place that does not have a library. We don't like that as a library board, and we certainly need to move forward on this. So I just urge your support in perhaps writing to the little email address down at the bottom there, which will send email then to the Clackamas County Board of Supervisors saying, yeah, as a citizen or as a member of the CIC or as a member of your neighborhood association, or maybe it's all the neighbors in your neighborhood. send some pressure their way to say let's get off the line and do something. If the county does not accept our offer, we do have some other options, which, because of those rules that we have in the state, I can't talk about. But we're not dead in the water if the county doesn't do it. But believe me, we've gone through 30 property evaluations over the past few months, extensively. I mean, it's field trips, mucking about, and this is really the prime piece of property. We think it really makes sense. So that's my bit. Questions?
Wow. Good. You're not on here. Go ahead. Tom O'Brien's first up here.
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we, as a Citizens Involvement Council, support this effort by writing a letter on behalf of the CIC to each of the county commissioners, encouraging them to accept and approve the agreement that has been proposed to them.
Did you just make a motion, or because he was?
I just made a motion.
Questions. I was wondering if there was questions before we.
I'll take a motion over a question. That's right.
I'll second it. Whoops, Paul got there first. Let's just second it.
So now there was these other comments. There was Kathy William. Did you want comments, or was this regarding what he was just doing?
No, I wanted to ask a couple questions. Sure.
Go for it.
Okay, because I'm worried about the funding.
Okay. I can speak a little bit about that.
Okay, because
yes,
I've
sir.
heard some things about it.
He's kind of explained it in this document here.
What I know about it is that there is a provision in the city charter that any time the city takes on indebtedness, that the citizens of Oregon City have to vote on. Right? Now, we would have to come up with a bond to finance this library probably over 15 years or so. I don't know. Until we have the site, we don't know what the building will look like. We don't know what the end figures are going to be. But the best guess is it's going to be something like 15 years. We, as a body of voters, several years ago, adopted the plan of having a library district, which has a little bit of taxing money, which comes then back to our library system. It is the best estimate of the city people who deal with this and other library people that we have enough money potentially in the future and already in the bank to make this loan, not a loan, a bond, a no tax increase. There would be no extra money from your pocket for the next foreseeable future for a library. It wouldn't go up. We wouldn't be asking you for more. We think we have the money in the bank, or will have the money in the bank over the next 10, 15 years to pay for this.
Okay. And you're counting on that 1 million from the Clackamas County? And isn't that a one-time shot, or?
Yes,
that's
correct.
I believe that's,
It's not every, it doesn't come every year?
it's a one-time thing.
Yeah, so that isn't going to really pay for it.
Well, see, I'm not the financial person. I'm more of a
Use your mic.
Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
I wish I could allay your fears about money just being thrown out the window as you drive down the highway. I don't think that's going to happen. One of the people on our board is a highfalutin financier, and he looks at these numbers very closely and assures us that this looks like a good deal, better than some places where they have to, really go out and beat the bushes for the money. We think we have the money right now. Now, a little bit of money, if you want to give us a couple million, I'm sure that we could use it. Right?
Okay. And then the other places you're looking at, would they be as much,
It's okay.
require as much money? Would they be more cost-effective?
I can't speak to that.
Well, with this economy, that's what worries me. Okay,
Well,
thank you.
these are places that are under negotiation. I really can't say right now, except I know that we have 3 properties, and the one that we really want is the county, and we've made that public. So,
And he's got a guy working on it with a degree called highfalutin.
Yeah.
I got to see that degree. Next up was William.
A number of questions, sir. On the map, thanks for the map.
Yeah.
I'm curious specifically, where is it, that plowed area there?
well, okay, if you see the curve, okay,
Yes.
it's if you draw a line. Let's see, where are we? This right here is Library Court.
Got it.
If you draw a line right straight across over to where you see kind of the parking lot there,
Okay.
it would be that pie-shaped piece
Quarter
of
pie
property right there.
shape. Okay, got it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I think that you did a good job on the advantages of this particular piece of property. One piece that was missing was that is pretty much in the geographic center of the library district as well.
That's correct.
I didn't notice that on there, but and I don't
Well, we-
recall the percentage of library patrons that do not live in Oregon City.
Well, there's quite a few. There's about 35% that live outside the city limits.
That's the number that I wanted to hear,
Yeah.
about 35%. And
But-
if there was a bonding measure proposed, would that affect them?
This is a county-wide library district, so they're already paying for a library, whether they use it or
Okay.
not.
That's what I wanted to hear. And then the last thing is that the motion that Tom made indicated the CIC writing a letter to each of the commissioners, but I think, as I recall from looking at the county's website, they just have one address, and that's the one that he entered on there.
That's an
And
email address.
That's the email
But you
address.
just make you send a letter, physical hard
I think a
copy.
physical letter is going to be more effective than an email.
So
They
each
get
of the
lots of
names.
emails and have staff read them.
Do we have stamps in our budget?
What you want.
I'll cover that. I'll cover that. Okay, so physical.
It's a little bit more personalized if you
Yeah.
address a letter to each individual, was my thinking.
So we're talking about 5 letters going out. That's okay.
Correct.
I don't mind doing that. It's,
It can say the same thing.
of course, okay. Okay, stop it. I don't have my thing. Timer done.
Trying to stop. That is not phone calls coming into him, that's a timer.
Okay. That answers my questions. Paul has one on here.
Paul?
Hi, I'm Paul Edgar out of
Yes.
Kanema area. Back in the old times, I remember talking about the library and the percentage of the patronage from outside of the city. Historically, when it was at Danielson's, was 51%.
51%.
51%. So if we have 59,000 residents
Yes.
outside of the geographic area, but within the library plan area, what the problem is if we bond this, and we bond this as a city,
Yes.
the city pays this, and the 59,000 residents, the 51% who are patrons of the library do not pay. Because unless we can, for bonding, they pay the county library portion that is minuscule and is part of really operations, not buildings and stuff like this, and maintenance.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case, Paul. I think the bonding
Hey,
authority would be the district.
No, it is not.
Library
No, it's the city.
district.
Okay, so the critical issue here is there a way that we could create a secondary ability to go out? Because if the cost becomes pretty high, like Kathy brought up, there are other buildings in other locations, and we have the problem not only of water rates going up, sewer rates going up, road maintenance rates going up, stormwater rates going up. We have to build a police station, and we're looking to try to fund and bond a public works building. So when we put all of those on, and I, as a 71-year-old, trying to look at protecting the interests of a lot of senior citizens here in this town, where we can't fee or tax them right out of their homes. They don't have the ability to create additional money easily. So we have to be really smart about this. And if the whole idea, I like the location, no question about it. If the county was a willing seller and made a deal that we couldn't refuse, but if they put a gun against our head and we look at $9 million, I guess, is kind of the figure that I've heard is being bounced around for a building, and we fund that about back against us, this could be part accumulatively where it really hurts a lot of people. So we have to be very, very careful about it. I will write a letter asking the county to be fair and reasonable. I think that's prudent. But yet at the same time, if the total cost of the picture gets too high, then I think we should look at Plan B, because somewhere along the line, there's only so much blood you can take out of a turnip.
Okay. That was our second set of 3 minutes. I do have a brief question, and it's not to fly in the ointment, but it's a sincere question. As 15 years out, does the library board start looking at the idea that Kindles are becoming more popular and people aren't buying or looking at books as much? And I mean, I didn't touch my first computer until 1984, and look how times have changed. What are they going to do in a library for the future with more people going to electronics?
Well, that's a very good question. I don't think that the American Library Association is just now beginning to look at that, saying, what's the future going to look like? If you've been on Library to Go, the electronic
Yes.
part, okay, both here in Multnomah, for example, Amazon is now offering library books to you for free. You have to have a little account with them, but that comes down. Adobe readers are coming in. Sony readers are coming in. I have a Pan Digital. Whoever heard of that? But they all work. We only got statistics this past month on the growth of downloads attributable to Oregon City last month, and the increase is pretty amazing. It went from like 0 to a couple thousand in a month, so it's coming.
I guess part of my question was, how does that impact building a grand library when, I wish for my term papers I would have had access to the internet.
I don't think it's going to be a grand library. I think it's going to be a sufficient library.
Sufficient,
Yeah.
okay.
And how the footprint is what we're trying to establish right now. And once what goes inside that footprint that will certainly be part of it. Is it a bank of computers? I've been doing some research over at our little library over here on a piece of microfilm, so I'm kind of in the way, and I get to hear everything that goes on. And there's people waiting to get on our available, 6 computers that we have over there, maybe it's 7, and they're really ticked that they can't get on right away, and they have to wait, and they have to, why can't you have more computers? Well, there's no space to even have a chair to have another computer, so... The Carnegie's lovable. I love it, but I don't think it'll work very well as a full-fledged library.
One more question from Ray over here.
Hey, real quick, Ray from Hillendale. A couple years ago, I'd seen a master plan for that whole Red Soils campus.
There is one, yes.
Yeah, so my only question for that is, since there was already things that were set in motion for those parcels, will that inflate our price because it's already was
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Because as I understand it, it would be nice if the county could be here to answer their own questions. But what we've heard is that the master plan had a commercial site there of some kind.
Oh, yeah, it did. Mm.
But I don't know anything more than that.
So instead of the commercial, it'd just be your suggestion, the library, instead of the commercial parcels that they were going to develop. Okay.
Call the question.
Okay. Forgot what the question. We had a motion on, did you write the motion down?
The motion was from Tom to
Right.
for the CIC to write a letter of recommendation to each each county commissioner, encouraging the sale of this site to the library district.
Okay, so we now call the question for, all those in favor on the CIC, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And those abstaining?
Aye.
Abstain.
You're abstaining?
Yes.
Okay. And what, I didn't hear.
Should I abstain? I don't know. Yeah. No, I vote for it.
We got you recorded down as no. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Done.
Okay, let's move right into the water master plan update. Nancy Kreschauer, she's got 10 minutes. Oh, sorry, that's 40.
This needs a little more time than 10. Yeah, good evening, Citizen Involvement Council. We are here to present the Water Master Plan to you. We were here about a year ago when we were still in the police station up on Warner Milne Road and gave a presentation, but we recently took it to the Planning Commission and realized it had been so long since we made the presentation to this group that it would be certainly a good idea to come back and repeat it and provide more information than we were able to provide at the last meeting. So Walt Meyer from West Jost and Associates is here to summarize what is indeed what the master plan is all about. And we last adopted a water master plan in about 2003, something like that. And many of the projects that were in that master plan have been completed. And so we also felt it was time to incorporate some of our urban growth boundary expansion areas that have been brought in since that master plan was completed. So we need to have a plan that is current for the city so that we can create budgets and do projects and make improvements where they're needed appropriately and in a way that's not just hodgepodge. We actually have a very good, well-organized plan to do it. So I'll just turn it over to Walt right now, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions as well, I believe.
Good evening. I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. Feel free to ask questions as I go along. So let me just get right into it. I'm going to talk a little bit about the service area, which pretty much encompasses the entire city.
Make sure you're using the mic. Thank you.
Encompasses city
Is it
and
on?
the urban growth
It is
boundary.
on.
To the left.
There we go. Thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the water demand that you have and will have in the future. I'll give you a very quick overview of the existing water distribution system, a little bit about future expansion, and then I'm going to talk quite a bit about financing, and then, of course, questions as we go along. So, first of all,
Do you want questions as we go along, or?
it's yes, whatever you feel comfortable with. Yeah, I think that'd be best.
Okay.
Let's just keep them to questions, though, and not editorial comments, so we can get through it.
And I'll try to move quickly.
That wasn't meant for you.
You have right now in the city about 32,000 inhabitants that you provide water to, almost 10,000 customers. And of course, the planning is both for the existing system and for the urban growth boundary, which is shown here.
Wait a second. I think we all have a question about why is that message on our screen?
Yes.
So I think it's probably best just to ignore it because I don't know what it is either. Do you know what this is, Chris?
It says out of range, or out of our mind.
Out of range. Do not operate at this resolution, or LCD damage may result.
I don't have it on my screen.
Yeah, something Pete did to
No,
all
it's
ours.
on these guys here.
It has to do with the resolution on this screen. If we
Oh.
change this, it'll come up. If we
Right.
lower the resolution here.
Okay.
Let me try that.
Okay.
So.
Oh, I'm so glad you know what it's
No,
all
it came
about.
up last meeting.
I told you it was all Pete's fault.
We only had an engineer.
Let's see.
There we go.
There you go. And then,
Are we doing settings?
yeah, move it.
We shouldn't be watching this. We might touch it when we're not supposed
All
to.
right, let's try that.
That should work.
All right.
Maybe we can all just make our changes to the water master plan right through this. I want all the water coming to my house now. No, I don't want that.
Did it go away?
Oh, yay.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot,
Very good.
Pete.
And since most of you are familiar with the urban growth boundary, I'm not going to dwell on this particular figure and move right on into demand. Right now, in Oregon City, you use about a little bit over 4 million gallons of potable water a day, and that's the average on an annual basis. But in the summertime, when you're irrigating your lawns, that goes up significantly, up to about 7 million gallons a day. And on a maximum day basis, it approaches 10 million gallons a day of potable water that's used. And on a maximum or peak hour, you can see it's 22 million gallons a day. Now, the last one is significant only in the sense that demand, that 22 million gallons a day, that only happens for an hour. And that's actually met by your reservoir. So you're not producing that much water. You're simply drawing down the reservoir while the peak water demand is occurring in your system.
Is that halftime of Super Bowl?
Oh, no, I don't think so. The Super Bowl's in January, and this is in the middle of, that's the hot day when people are really out there using water. And just to give you a sense of the average use on an annual basis, you can see here an awful lot of it is your residential. You got 2.2 million is just from single-family residences. Almost 0.7 is from commercial. 0.6 is from multifamily residential, and then you got some institutional uses, which includes schools and parks and things of that nature. Now, the water master plan we're talking about today, or the water distribution master plan, really deals with the distribution system. You are members of the South Fork Water Board, and as such, that's a different plan. And of course, you participate in that. But today, we're going to talk primarily about distributing the water inside the city of Oregon City. Now, you do have a great water supply from the Clackamas River, but you also have storage, and I'm going to summarize that a bit. You have an extensive metering system, both for each customer and for wielding water to Clackamas River Water and others. You have pumping stations and, of course, all of the piping. You have 18 million gallons of treated water storage inside of the city. That's made up of 5 reservoirs. And right now, for the system as it stands, that you have adequate storage. And that's both for purposes of fighting fires, for meeting that daily fluctuations I showed you earlier, and for emergency storage. So, and then on the bottom left there, you can see a summary of the 5 different reservoirs that you have and where the storage is located. The Oregon City water distribution system is really quite complex. And I'm not going to go through this, but the elevation on this is actually accurate. And because you have such a large amount of relief in the city, you have a whole bunch of different pressure zones. And in a water distribution system, you have to meet the pressure demands of each pressure zone, and this is how it's achieved in Oregon City. So it's a complex system. Don't have to go through it, but just understand it's there, it works well, and you know, it's a good system. You have over 150 miles of pipelines underground. And this is significant because we actually have a little display over here, and in your spare time I encourage you to look at them, because these pipes do rust and they also internally corrode. And usually we look at a useful life of a pipe somewhere between 50 to 100 years. And I think a good average with the newer materials we have especially, we use 75 years. For some of your old steel or cast iron lines, it's closer to 50, or well, for the steel, it's probably less than 50. It's more like 40 years, and or the galvanized pipe is probably 30. But nowadays with the ductile iron, it's more. But you can see look at this meter, how it corrodes. So if you assume an average useful life of a buried pipeline to be 75 years, and you have 150 miles underground, that means you need to replace 2 miles a year to stay even with the system.
She's just helping him with the computer code.
Yeah, go ahead,
Okay.
sorry.
Okay, that's all right. So, in other words, if you were to replace 2 miles a year, then you are on what I would call a sustainable basis of maintaining your system. And that means about $2.3 million of investment that you need to keep replacing pipelines. Okay? So it's a significant amount of investment necessary to maintain the useful life of your system. In our analysis for the Water Distribution Master Plan, we took an extensive look at your ability to serve the area, both in terms of meeting fire flows, which is really the governing piece when you think about it. The sizing of your pipes is primarily governed to be able to provide effective firefighting capacity in the system, and this is just an example of the kind of analysis we took a look at. We, of course, included the land use to come up with the future water projections. In other words, when we're projecting water use, we looked at your existing land uses, how much water is used for those land uses, and then we simply extended that to full build-out of the existing land use. And as you can see, where you have an existing demand of about 4.2 million gallons per day on average, that's going to go up to approaching 7 million gallons per day when you reach build-out of your existing urban growth boundary and infill within the city limits, because you're not fully built out within the city limits. And there's a corresponding increase in the peak demands for each of the uses.
Is there any estimate as to when that build-out might occur, if it ever
Yeah,
occurs?
we looked at that. It's in the plan. If you were to grow at the rates you were growing in the 90s and the early 2000s, it's not going to happen. But at 3% growth, which is modest compared to what you were growing, you'd reach it within 20 years. So, 3% compound, that adds up very, very quickly. So I would guess around 2030, depending on how fast it's going to grow and what the economic cycles are.
And I think we recognize that we can't predict how fast we're going to grow out to our UGB. But it is our responsibility to at least have a plan in place that identifies what's needed to serve the UGB, so that if the growth occurs, we're ready to say, you need to put in this pipe and it needs to be 18 inches or whatever the case might be.
Correct. Yeah. And here is a map that shows some of the facilities that you're going to need in the future to serve that area. And you can see there's some reservoirs way out in the periphery. And one of the reasons they're outside, that one reservoir shown outside the urban growth boundary, it's because we want to put the reservoir at high elevation so it can serve inside the urban growth boundary with a proper elevation. And that's related to the relief of the land.
About where is that?
Oh, that's, where the Henrici Reservoir is? It's about another mile and a half past that, way out there.
Okay.
And the reservoir that's way out there is what would be required to make sure we have sufficient water pressure for the Beaver Creek Road Concept Plan urban growth boundary area. The other new reservoir that's anticipated is a little 3 million gallon tank, which, well, can you point to it? That is needed to make sure we have sufficient pressure for the intermediate Park Place zone to serve the Park Place urban growth boundary expansion areas. And again, we don't know when that's going to happen, but we do know that upon build-out, that additional storage is needed. And what we'd like to do is incorporate these improvements in our master plan, and then we'll be updating our system development charges, which developers pay when they get out building permits. And we would incorporate these improvements into that system development charge so we can start collecting money to assist in building such a thing as a reservoir. One developer wouldn't build a whole reservoir, but we need to make sure our system development charges are adequate so that we can start saving up the money for that.
Just as a point of interest, since we just gone through the meetings on earthquakes, how modern are these water reservoirs that are up on top of are they earthquake proofed?
Well, the oldest reservoir that we have is our 10.5 million gallon tank on Mountain View Street, and we just recently did a seismic upgrade on that.
Okay.
And then our steel tanks are quite resilient for the kinds of forces that come with earthquakes. And so we have done some seismic reviews of those, but the steel tanks are amazingly flexible. So not to say there wouldn't be some damage, but they're much more resilient than our concrete tanks.
And I think we're slated on the Boynton reservoirs to make some more improvements on that one. That still is on the radar to do. Paul?
Maybe Eli could help us on that. But the Mountain View Reservoir, and I brought this up earlier on other presentations, that has a significant loss of water that just it's seeping out of the tank down into the ground. And I know that in talking to a couple of the people that have worked for Eli, that in the past, that the estimates were very high, over 10% water loss out of that. This is water that we buy bring up into the tank, and it may be greater than that. Is there any idea of exactly what the water loss percentage is of the water that we buy and put into our largest water reservoir?
Hold on, Walt.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Eli DeBerry.
Is that mic on? Make sure. Just
Yes, it is.
lights on. Okay, thanks.
Just before you answer that, is that a fact in the city? I didn't know. I've never.
Yeah,
heard
it
about
is a major fact because we do buy a lot of water and put it into that reservoir.
I meant that the
It's
fact
not
that it's
quite a
leaking.
fact.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there has been leaks in there, but as Nancy said, that we did the seismic improvements to it, and that's reduced those leaks quite substantially. There are leaks. It's a concrete reservoir, but we do have divers come in annually. We'll have them in there next spring to check these leaks too, but it has been reduced quite substantially.
Do you have any percentage idea as to what the water loss is as a percentage of the total water?
I do not at this time. No, I don't have any percentage.
System-wide, in the distribution system, 15% of the water that you purchase is lost through whatever leaks, etc.
All of our piping.
Most of the leaks
System-wide.
are from like water main leaks. We just had a leak detection survey come through, and they found leaks that we don't see. They don't surface. So we've been repairing them this week. As a matter of fact, we're on that. So it's not just that reservoir that has a big percentage. It's the city and with the old pipes, and there's leaks that we have to repair and whatnot.
We did we resealed the bottom of the reservoir when we did the seismic improvements. And then, like Eli said, he has an annual program for diving and looking for leaks. They have equipment that they detected, and then they seal up what they find. And I remember when we were reviewing the design for the new reservoir, we had the consultant at that time look at, what kind of leakage should we expect, and how is this relative to the big picture. And the conclusion they came to that compared to building a whole new 10.5 million gallon reservoir, the amount of leakage from that tank, you wouldn't get your money back for a really long time. I don't remember how many years, but it was so long that it was like, well, you're going to, with a very, very old tank that was built in the early 1900s, you do your best to seal it when you can. You do you go in with divers and repair leaks, and then that would be much more cost effective than replacing the whole reservoir.
Well, aren't didn't they just get through on Henrici by BCT, or is that yours?
That's theirs.
I know, because I have Phyllis Stockton and Phil Hart, and we go there, and they have all that construction stuff and dug up everything. So they were repairing pipes or something?
I think that's Clackamas
Yeah,
River
that was
water.
Clackamas
Oh,
River
that was
water that
Clackamas.
was putting in a transmission line to their tanks up there at Henrici Road. So it's different from what we're talking
okay.
about.
I wasn't sure then.
Okay. Why don't you stay? You know the system.
And somebody on the other side.
Okay. One of the things we did do is to look at what are the improvements that need to be made to the existing system to be able to provide the level of service that we have as a standard. And this table here shows that some of the projects that we've identified that need to be made to bring the system up to standard. These are improvements to the existing system within the city limits to provide better fire flows in the system. The other thing we looked at is renewal and replacement, and based upon experience from the operations, Eli actually identified those replacement projects that are most critical. And this is not a complete list. It is simply the ones that have come to the top of the list. But remember I mentioned we need to do about $2.3 million a year to be able to keep up. These are example projects of pipelines that need to be replaced because they're old and they have a lot of leaks, and they've had to give them a lot of maintenance attention. And for each of these projects in the master plan, we've identified the area, the sizes of pipes that need to be replaced, and so forth. So that's part of the CIP, or the capital improvement plan, that's in the master plan. Now, the piece that's very interesting is how to pay for all this. And what Oregon City has been doing historically is to actually, it has more revenue from user fees than is needed for what I would call basic operational expenses. And this shows the history for the last 5 years. And the difference has been used for capital improvements. Nancy mentioned the improvements made to the Mountain View Reservoir. There's been pipeline replacement projects. There's repairs going on right now. And so the revenue that's been greater than the operating expenses of the system have been used for capital improvements. Now, you do have a outstanding bond issue, which was passed in 1994, that was used to make some improvements back then. The debt service for that bond issue will be fully paid off in fiscal year 2014-15, okay? And part of that bond issue, the voters here in Oregon City passed a charter amendment that once the bonds are paid off for that particular debt service, there is a requirement in the charter that rates be rolled back to pre-debt levels or pre-bond issue levels. So what exactly that means is somewhat questionable, but the assumption we have made is that as a minimum what you would do is you would roll back the amount that you charge for water to the 1994 level, and then increase them only at the rates of the 3% allowed by the bond, by that particular charter amendment. In other words, that charter amendment allows for a 3% annual increase to recognize the cost of inflation. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But just to give you an idea, well, let me go back here. You can see here that the operating expenses right now are a bit under $5 million, and to projected to increase to a little bit over about $5.2 million. That's the cost of doing business operation without any capital expenditures. And that is made up, as you can see in this chart, you've got a large piece of that, about a third of it, is for the payment for the water that you purchase from the South Fork Water Board. And then you've got salaries, fringe benefits, pump station chemicals, materials, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's shown in this particular chart. That's what the costs are made up of.
So that's the purple wall. We've got so many colors here. I want
Yeah,
to
the
make
purple
it
on the
clear.
left, and it doesn't, on the bottom left there, and I've lost, oh, here it
About a
is.
third.
This area here is the payments that you make to the South Fork Water Board for the water that you purchase that's then wheeled out to the customers. Yes?
Has that been increasing, and if so, at what kind of rate?
It has increased, and I am not sure what the rates have been, but it depends upon the actions of the South Fork Board. It's pretty much outside the control of Oregon City, except for your representation on the South Fork Water Board. Now, the South Fork Water Board is made up of representatives of Oregon City, West Linn, and is there? That's it.
Just the two.
I understand that, but I have a concern about where we are at as a purchaser from South Fork in terms of the increases we may or may not be receiving. And I'm having a lot of difficulty pinpointing what that amounts to in terms of dollar revenue that we're expending to South Fork.
We can get you those records, Tom. We had, 2 years ago, there was a fairly significant increase from South Fork, and I wish I could remember exactly how much it was. So we ended up having to pay more for the water we purchased from them.
That was my understanding,
And I
Nancy.
think they were trying to level off at, trying to have, say, about a 5% increase per year. And again, I want to verify that number for you.
It'd be nice to be able to correlate it to our own income increases versus expenses.
I think that's an interesting point.
Okay.
So South Fork can charge us 5% more per year for water, and we can only increase our rates by 3% per year.
Per charter.
Per charter.
That's correct.
That's a big concern of mine.
That doesn't work.
Do the math.
It does, that is a concern, and actually, you'll see there's a recommendation in the master plan that we separate out their rates from our rates, kind of like Tri-City for wastewater, so that it doesn't necessarily impact the water distribution system.
And just for a point of clarification on South Fork, they've been very good. They've had a real problem protecting water rights, and they had enormous litigational problems, opportunities protecting water rights, and so they went at it in our behest the smartest way they could, and have tried to do everything they can to protect and our water rights. Lake Oswego is entering into a water agreement, and they're going to suck a lot of water out. Everybody's fighting over water. Water may be one of the biggest battlegrounds in the future, and South Fork has been really fighting very hard in our behest. I can't argue with them, and I think they've done some really smart things about trying to keep their costs down. And we even, in fact, as a city, jumped in bed with them to help mitigate some of their long-term bonding problems and opportunities, and we did it in a very aggressive way and saved us a lot of money. So South Fork is we own it, at least 51% is said. So we have a legal majority opinion in it. So when you get into a trouble with it, argue with the city commission.
Let's get back to the presentation. They got 15 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. I mentioned already that we do have an outstanding debt service, and here's the amount of money that we owe each year until the year 2014, 15, at which time it will be fully paid off, which means in that year, as far as the distribution system is, your system's fully paid for. You have no more outstanding debt, which is actually good news. So you have a lot of assets, and it'll be paid for. Yes, sir?
Excuse me, Walt, why isn't that number going down? I mean, doesn't debt service, as you pay it off?
Usually the way bonds are sold is they come up with an equal annual payment. So
Yeah.
each year you pay the same amount, and the closer you come out to retirement, the more of that amount is principal, just like your house payment, the exact same way. So even though your interest is going down each year because you owe less, the way the bond is sold is it's sold on the principle of essentially equal annual payments.
And to clarify debt service payment, that's on the equipment, but not necessarily the operating and upkeep, correct? Or are you going to get into that? I mean, this
Debt service, that is strictly debt. That's bonds that were
Bonds have
sold
been-
that you are paying off.
capital
to purchase
Exactly.
additional equipment.
To purchase whatever was purchased
There
in
was
that.
some large projects done actually in the Park Place area.
Okay.
We built the Barlow Crest Reservoir, the Hunter Pump Station. We also did some South End pipe work, and that was primarily what the bonds
That's
were
what I meant,
for.
kind of like facilities,
Yeah,
because
it's
there's still
facilities.
costs
Mhm.
each year.
Capital.
Yeah.
Right. Now, because you are facing this specter or this rollback issue, we looked at a number of different scenarios in the future of how you can proceed as a city. And this is going to be something we're going to be talking at length with the commission on. But the first scenario was if the voters, and any change that's made to the charter is going to require a vote of the people, okay? So when I say here on projection or scenario number 1, no rollback, that means that's going to require a vote of the people. So if the voters approved no rollback and you were to continue raising rates 3% per year, that's one scenario. So if you kept the rates as they are but increased them each year 3%, that's scenario number 1. Scenario number 2 would be a rate rollback. Now we looked at 2 different alternatives for the rollback. The first scenario would be to roll them back to the 1994 levels and then increase them every year 3%. The second scenario would be to roll them back to 1994 and then increase the rates 3% only in those years that the Commission actually approved a rate increase of 3%. And there were like 5 or 6 years in that window between 1994 and now where the Commission chose not to increase rates. And so that would be this particular scenario. And then the final one would be to not have a rollback and increase rates even a bit more so that you could achieve a sustainable system, so that you could in fact have that differential of $2.3 million per year, so that you could keep the system at a sustainable basis where you would not have to borrow money in the future to bring it back up to snuff. So those are the 4 scenarios I'm going to show you right now. The first one is no rollback of rates and then the 3% increase on an annual basis. And you can see with this particular scenario that you are able to generate a little bit over $1 million. It approaches about $1.5 million roughly in capital to fund projects, but you're not going to get to a sustainable basis with this particular scenario. The second scenario is where there would be a rollback, and you can see as soon as a rollback occurs in the year 2015-16 that the amount of revenue is going to be less than operational costs. So once this were to take place, you'd have to cut operations significantly, and you would have no money available for capital improvements.
Well, you were going
Yes.
change these slides, were you?
Pardon?
Were you going to change these slides?
I did. I thought I caught that one. I did catch it. Yes, I changed it.
The first 4 years are higher than they were the previous slide?
These are different. This is
I noticed in the.
I see. Oh, okay.
I fixed it. You were right. I had the one that was off a little bit, and I fixed it.
Okay, got it.
And then and the third scenario is where you would roll back to the 1994 levels and increase it only the years that the Commission increased, and you can see there's a significant larger deficit in terms of the difference between the revenue and the operating expenses. And as with the previous...
Upside down.
Pardon?
Upside down.
Yeah. As you can see, there's in excess of, there's about a $1 million plus deficit in trying to meet your operating costs with this particular scenario. And then the third scenario is where there would be no rollback, a 3% increase through the year 14-15, which is the year, that's the witching year, and then a 10% increase that year, followed by 2 5% increases, and then after that a 3% increase again. And this particular scenario would give you, by the year, you can see 2021, would give you enough money to be on a sustainable basis to maintain your water distribution system. But it would require a significant rate increase out about 5 years from now, or 4 years from now. So those are that gives you a continuum of potential rate impacts. Obviously, we're going to be presenting this to the Commission. They're going to have the tough call of how, what they want to do and what they want to do with the presenting this to the public, because anything that involves elimination or an alteration of the rollback will require a vote of the people.
And I might add that the adoption of the master plan will not, we're not going to ask the Commission to select a scenario here as part of their adoption of the water master plan. what we want them to do is adopt the water master plan that identifies all of our needs, and then have a very wide-based, comprehensive public conversation about the water system, the various scenarios we have to choose from, and make sure people are have a lot of information about what's going on with this rate stuff and the water system and why do I need this, because eventually if we make any changes regarding the rollback, we will have to go to the vote of the people, and we would like as much as possible for our voters to be as well informed as possible and to have been part of the conversation. So I'm going to be encouraging the City Commission to have a very wide public discussion about it, and I'm really hoping that the CIC can be an active participant and reach out to your neighborhoods and get more people to learn about the situation so that the City Commission can make their selection and then people can make their choices.
Another series of symposiums.
Yeah, maybe.
So the city will come down to deciding on one of those and present it to the public, so they won't confuse the
I
public.
wouldn't be
Vote
surprised.
for your choice.
Well, no, I wouldn't be surprised.
Multiple choice.
That's a good question, and it's all up to the City Commission. They may select a scenario that they feel like is the best for the community. They also might do some outreach to find out, what sort of test the waters and find out what are the values of the community relative to the water system.
So this is only impacting Oregon City, not West Lynn, who you say also.
Correct. This is strictly
They don't
Oregon
have
City.
the same situation we're facing with rollbacks and all that.
They do not have that rollback
That was
provision.
something Oregon City did.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So anyway, the recommendations that I've made are to begin this dialogue with the citizens. I think it's important that the citizens understand, and it's ultimately their call. They need to understand, the investment that we have in the system and what it means if they roll back the rates or if they don't roll back the rates. The second recommendation is I'm recommending a sustainable system. I firmly believe that you have an excellent source of water, you have an excellent system, and we ought to fund it to a level that will maintain it like that on a sustainable basis without debt. If we put off making improvements to the systems, we can get away with it for a while, but it'll catch up with it eventually, and then it'll be a big deal. So the more we put it off, it's simply borrowing on in essence, are borrowing on the infrastructure, because it's like your house. If you don't paint it, it's going to go bad.
And actually, the one scenario, if we have no funding for capital, we won't do any pipeline replacements, and it's really important to at least do some of your pipes every year, like the Claremont and the areas that are having they're old and got a lot of leaks and a lot of.
Well, not only will you, if you have a rollback, not only will you be doing zero capital, you will be doing no leak detection. You will have a tough time just meeting the basic mandated requirements of the law in terms of maintaining your collection system, because you're going to be cutting staff significantly. You don't have that many staff. You got 9 people or something out there doing this system. So it's going to be draconian in terms of your overall service to the people, and it's going to show up. But that's why I'm recommending that you bite the bullet, or that the people of Oregon City bite the bullet, make that investment in the system, because you got then a system that's paid for, rather than having to go to debt. And then finally, is to break your bill apart so that people understand how much of it's going for water purchasing with the South Fork Water Board, so that when there's a rate increase by the South Fork Water Board, it shows up as a rate increase for the South Fork Water Board, and a separate line item for your water distribution system. And with that, I will gladly try to answer your questions. Yes,
And we have 4 minutes on the clock at this point.
Real quick one. One of your assumptions is that Oregon City, population-wise, stays the same. It grows by a certain percentage. There are no new annexations which require water, sewer, blah, blah.
What we've assumed is that the improvements necessary for the existing system, the first table I showed, and the replacement will be funded from rates. Any extension of service into the urban growth boundary, we've assumed will have to be paid for by system development charges.
Or the developer themselves.
For the development, or by the developers, yes.
So all this is not talking about that growth, this is just
This is-
maintaining what we got right now.
This is maintaining what you have.
Thank you.
Yes, sir?
In that instance, doesn't the current system have additional ongoing expenses related to pushing more volume out of, say, the Boynton tank, the feeder system that goes from Boynton to, excuse me, a expanded South End area, or an expanded Park Rose area, or Beaver Creek area? Aren't those infrastructure costs also increased within the city in the current system as growth occurs?
In fact, some of your system is in fact sized to accommodate some of that growth from previous planning efforts. And in the development of the system development charges, those can be included in those charges so that they include both there's two elements to the system development charge. There's the improvement fee and the development fee, and so you can include both of those in the system development charges. And one of the things is once the commission adopts the distribution system master plan, then there's going to be recomputation of the system development charges to make sure it's in fact fully recovering those costs.
So the capital expense involved with those two proposed new reservoirs would be totally paid for by system development charges?
Yes, and developers, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, we wouldn't ask ratepayers to pay for new facilities that are explicitly required for new growth.
Paul?
One
Couple
last
minutes
thing.
left.
Capital improvements projects can be funded by bond issues in advance to leverage lower cost monies and still maintain rates without greater impact. So there are some alternatives. One of the most critical issues is pay now or pay later, and that's doing robust, intelligent, preventive maintenance down the line, and there's no substitute. We have to do it. So we just have to think that through, how to do it, and I think this is going to be an ongoing debate for all of us to learn a lot. But we have to pay now or pay later, and pay later a lot more.
Down to 40 seconds. Anybody else have a question? Okay. We appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you.
I think you guys are doing a wonderful job, and
Thank
it
you.
is appreciated.
And before you leave tonight, it is kind of cool to check out, well, at least to me, it's kind of cool.
like rusty
to
pipes.
check
I
out-
went by there, it wasn't cool.
'Cause, you
Oh,
know,
you're on the rusty pipes.
and I think most people, if they even think about the pipes that are underground, they just think water's flowing through them, everything's nice and clean.
How
And
come
what
you
see
didn't bring
over-
woodwinds?
What you see over time is that the water reacts to the pipe materials and cause all kinds of interesting
I
things.
can't see it anyway.
Okay. Had a note here previously. As I said earlier, we have staff that come to these meetings and to try and address some questions that come up. We've been advised that there was going to be a motion made this evening here, and so with that in mind, some staff was here to respond to any questions regarding that motion, and so we're jumping.
Excuse me, one point of order.
Oh, sorry.
I want to make sure we have another guest, make sure that people that have signed in on the guest list back there.
Sign in on the guest list,
Sign-in
right.
sheet, please, so that we know who all
Okay.
is here. And
If you haven't signed in, sign in so that our secretary can record that. Again, what I was saying was that under advisement from some emails, we understand there's something that's being presented this evening, so we have a few people here to help respond to that. So we're jumping to new business, and I believe that that's Paul at this point.
Thank you. I'd like to come up in front if I could.
And let's put, Paul, how much time? I mean, it's 8:07, so it would be nice to get this 10 minutes in your presentation, and then let the questions.
Thank you. My name's Paul Edgar. I'm out of the Kanema Neighborhood Association. What I'm bringing before you is going to be part of asking for a resolution with code enforcement on an understanding of what we should be doing on the city's sign code and regulations and how we enforce it. Do we enforce or not enforce our city sign codes, and what type of priority is it and should it be? Right now, sign codes basically have little or no enforcement other than what is really brought to somebody's attention. And right now, we've had a problem where we have so many signs, both political and non-political signs all over the city. We just look like a blighted city. It's really terrible. It can affect people's lenders' opinion about Oregon City, about even lending money on property in Oregon City. And who is this arbitrator that turns around and says, what do we enforce and what don't we enforce? And I think that we have to, as a city and as a Citizen Involvement Council, know this affects all of us. We are the citizens of this city. And those who are sworn to enforce our codes, if you're a city manager or you're a law enforcement person, you swear to enforce all of the codes and the regulations, the laws of the city. That's just one of the basic parts of what you do. So now, how do we selectively say, oh, but I'm not going to enforce some of them? Which ones? How do we make those determinations? Well, right now, we have political signs got thrown up everywhere, all over the city. It was done by a group of people, and honestly, on all sides of the issue, there are people that are doing it. So it's not just one side, even though I really pinpoint one side. But these political signs went up in public right-of-ways, on private lands, public lands, and on lands of landowners without their permission. There was, within code, it says how many signs you can have on a parcel of land. And when you get more than one sign, you're violating city code. And that's not being ever enforced. And the size of signs. So we have people that have gone out with full knowledge of the city code. And if they don't have the knowledge, ignorance is not bliss. They should have had it. And so when you have, in this case recently, we had signs go out for the recall of Jim Nacita, coming from that organization. And they went out virtually overnight. And as an example, here in our, as one of the people that's here is the lady from Green Grocers. And she can come up and also testify and tell you that not only signs went out next to her and on a business owner without the business owner's permission, across the street without the business owner's permission, down the street on residential property in multiple places, all over the strategic corners, and this was done in a concerted effort by a single group of people violating knowledgeably our city code, knowing what they're doing and saying, I don't care. And when you do that, then there should be a price to pay. That's wrong. It's violating Oregon City's codes and statutes. And if these people are allowed to go out and do this all over, all the time, then what respect do we have of any law? Who determines? And so, within this thought process, I was appalled at what I saw. I thought it went too far. We just had turned the spigot on to crazy, and we have to stop it. I felt that this was a time I didn't want to curb public process of the election coming along, but now's a time where we can go out there and any one of us can take a look. You can drive down South End Road. You can drive down Central Point Road. You can drive any of these places. You can see signs everywhere placed illegally. And I would there's well over 100 signs, probably well over 200 signs. I didn't go out and try to count them. There's just so many of them. It's a proliferation, and it's in violation of our city code because 90% of them are there illegally. My opinion. I think what I'm asking for is a resolution out of the Citizen Involvement Council. And I would like to take this paragraph where it says, "This action today, coming from the Oregon City Citizens Involvement Council, deplores this violation of our city code and asks that it get investigated to find out who did this and if these alleged violations should be enforced to the full extent of the law. Those found to have been involved, if proven, should be limited from service on any of the standing Oregon City committees, boards, commissions, and barred from standing for election within Oregon City for a period of time." This is a judgment about values. This is a judgment about people whose value is that they don't care about our code and regulations. If in fact, in my opinion, if they don't care, then what are they doing when they are on some other committee or some other board and they use this same level of judgment? I don't want that same level of judgment used on other boards representing our city if these people already have displayed a judgmental call that says, I don't care about the city's regulations. So anyway, what I'm asking for is a resolution based on this one paragraph, and I would like to move a motion for that resolution.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is the election not tomorrow night?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I take offense to the fact that you're saying that you want to prosecute the people that do volunteer work in this town to the best of their ability. I think that's very strong, Paul.
If they break the law
It's
in
very
doing
strong,
it.
Paul.
I know, but if they break the law and on doing it, is that where do you draw the line?
Well, it's a code enforcement issue, and it needs to be addressed with the police department, code enforcement,
and I'm asking-
not brought to this committee.
Well, I'm asking
My
for.
opinion.
I don't know that the police department would, that's the
If
best
code
of their...
enforcement is under the police department.
Well, it's whether somebody ever cares about it. Do you like it the way it is?
I have nothing to say. I don't like the whole issue. I've stayed neutral in the whole thing, and I just wish that we could get through tomorrow without spending a bunch of hard feelings and lost production time over something like this. The damage is done. You can't take it back.
Well, it's been allowed to go on, and someone.
And deal with it later and bring it up.
Well, now is the time where you can
I don't
really
agree.
witness and see it.
If I can
because-
interrupt here, maybe the best way to handle this evening, he's trying to do it while it's topical, and I understand that. But I understand that this has been was addressed or brought up this morning in a meeting. Chris, could you explain about the meeting that you said that went on today?
Well, I think Nancy.
And then we go from here. Let's just hear what they
Nancy
have.
was also in our
Okay.
managers meeting.
And I guess this was a situation that was brought to their attention, so they discussed it, and that's why Nancy's here this evening to explain what the situation is. Is that appropriate?
Sure. Signs and political signs in the city have been an ongoing issue for I've been employed here for 14 years, so every time there is an election, it becomes probably the single most important thing to both sides of an election. However, there are 30,000 residents, 32,000 residents in the city, and the concerns and the complaints that are filed 365 days a year also warrant having a response. Paul, you probably remember the days when there weren't any signs out there, and I was sticking violation stickers all over every sign in town, and we had piles behind the police station, and Public Works picked up signs out of the public right-of-way, and we had probably a pile down at Public Works as well. Staffing levels haven't changed at all, and for the most part, every sign in the public right-of-way is in violation. A lot of the signs on private property are in violation. A lot of the code became relaxed maybe 7th Street, during the 7th Street construction, and all the businesses that had construction in front wanted A-frame signs and directional signs, all of which are against the code, and they currently are today, including everything on Main Street, every banner, all of those types of signs are. The code doesn't differentiate between political and non-political. A sign is a sign is a sign, and enforcement for one is enforcement for all for our code. Now, with 7th Street, and the commission wanted to be sympathetic back then at that time, once the construction was done, the signs were supposed to go away. Once you get used to those signs, they really feel that I can't survive. My business can't survive without that sign. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And Main Street wanted their signs. Beaver Creek wanted their signs. Then there was an unwritten rule. Maybe Nancy can, I've been under a lot of departments. Nancy might be able to help explain some of this. There was an unwritten rule that went before the commission, and the code was never amended, but it was to allow A-frame signs in the mixed-use corridor. However, it still has not updated. The code has not been amended. And I believe that Tony, or the planning department, probably brings back every year to the commission when they're doing goal setting to have, I guess, the amendment and review of the sign code reviewed at that time, which has not been set as a priority for the city commission to fund, nor the staffing levels to be able to address the current staffing it would take to stay on top of it.
We're talking about political signs that are temporary. Can we stick to that part?
There's nothing in the code that separates a political sign from any other temporary sign or realtor sign or A-frame sign or banner. I mean, it's all
Permission from a homeowner?
Well, that's a civil matter. If there was a trespass or an illegal sign placed up, that's a civil matter. What the Oregon City Code says is that one temporary is a sign per street frontage under a single ownership, provided such a sign does not cause a public safety hazard or nuisance, has no more than 2 faces, and that no sign face exceeds 4 square feet in area. So that's pretty much most of the political signs, these lawn signs that you're going to see fit that category. There's no coordination or requirement to register, pull a permit, let the city know that you're going to put this yard sign up on a property. So we have no way to know if it's illegally placed on private property. So that's kind of the one issue. Then you have the second issue of these going in public right-of-way. And, I'm the first to concede. When you drive through the city, especially around the political time, you see these things going up all over the place. The one good thing about the political signs relative to the other signs that you see, such as, we buy houses now, or whatever other, all the other signs you see that get stuck in the right-of-way, that these political signs tend to have a shorter window, and they tend to be taken down once the election's over. So the question for the policymakers at the city commission level, and at this level too, if you create a recommendation, is how much energy and money and resources do you want to put into the enforcement of a situation that is cyclical and tends to remedy itself. So that's where the policy. To me, there are other signs that are much more distasteful, distractive, illegal in the city that are there 365 days for years and years and years, whereas these tend to cycle through relatively quickly in a short amount of time. If they're a safety hazard and it's brought to our attention, of course we go address it. But to knock on a door and say, is that, do you mean to have this sign on your private property? We will never do that. I mean, there's no way we can know, certainly.
Can I speak to that a little bit? I think specifically for me, it's obvious public property. And if I see a sign, I don't care if it's a sign. If I see something on public property that's placed there, I remember growing up and going to the Bluff. And I always wanted to throw something over the bluff. But there was a big sign that said $500 fine for littering. I don't know what the fine is for littering in Oregon City is anymore, but it really was a big deterrent. If you see a sign on public property, that's litter and that's garbage, and shouldn't that be a $500 fine?
Your code, how do you guys handle?
I mean, that's a big deterrent. And usually a political sign would have who placed the sign. I think they're supposed to have that on there.
No.
Never any individual.
The content of the sign is irrelevant because we cannot regulate the content. It's no different than Oregon Realty or anything else. A sign out in the right-of-way is a sign in the right-of-way, much as many signs in the right-of-way up and down 7th Street or Main or Beaver Creek, every A-frame sign or banner out there is illegal. They do not meet the code.
And eventually, what staff would like to see eventually is having a sign code that requires a permit get obtained for the sign, because then you have a revenue stream to be doing your enforcement. And also to have perhaps some sort of aesthetic that goes along with it, so that you have to have a certain material. Because let's face it, there's varying degrees of nice signs out there too, even though they're all illegal. But so many businesses really do feel like it's very important for them to have an A-frame out in front. And even we've heard from some of the folks that specialize in main streets and that kind of thing that they are valuable and they create kind of an atmosphere or charm. So, but it's how it's done. But that's in some other code someday that we haven't had
the resources to do yet.
Right. It's a big. Opening the code up, the sign code up, is really complicated because you also have all the freedom of speech issues
and content.
I guess the thought was, and I agree with you, but the thought is too. Moreover, is that it's not like an A-frame, like say 8 feet from the front of a building, a renter or a lessee, or but a sign that's like in a park. That's obviously that's not near anybody's home. It's not 5 feet from a sidewalk of somebody's personal property. It's just like on vacant land or a public park. Obviously, a homeowner didn't set it out there and mistakenly put it in a wrong area, or a business owner didn't. It was obviously would have been placed in a place that they thought was visible and easy to put, but probably was not within a mile or 5 miles of their home. I think that's what was the greater issue probably in this specific instance.
I have a comment about that. Just several signs, garage sale signs, birthday party signs in the park. You wouldn't believe the number of complaints we get on or used to get on stuff like that. And sometimes it's neighbor against neighbor, and they know they're having a garage sale and we can turn them in for that. And the city hasn't simply wanted to address that without reviewing the sign code. And certainly every single person out there doesn't deserve that $300 fine. And generally, the fine is always imposed by the court. And how much process and time and paperwork does staff take on to process that? And they would most likely be dismissed if they removed the sign or somebody else did. So.
Initially, when we started this conversation, I gave Paul the 10 minutes, and I let this other conversation continue because I think that's important that Nancy and the staff explain what their policy is on signs one way or another, and it's all signs, it sounds like, that it addresses, and I thought that was important that we hear that. And I think from what you said, that if somebody feels that that if something was placed in their private property, it's a civil matter. Did I hear that come out? And how is the best way they should handle that so we can at least get those questions answered? Is there something they should do, or they don't come to the city, right? That's another. They have to go through another source. I'm asking for.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give legal advice. But however,
that's something they'd have to do legally.
It is something that they would have to do on their own. Chris, I'm not sure how a trespass. It's not a criminal trespass either.
And we don't do civil.
Yes, and they don't do civil.
Because as we've
so
heard, it was both sides involved in all this dispute.
anybody can remove anything off their property that they didn't allow to be there.
Okay. And there's no way to prove, other than which individual did it, more of a group or anything like that, and it's hard to sue when you don't know who did it.
Well, what we see with every campaign throughout my history here is that you have groups of volunteers that do not always get the election packet that talks about where you can or can't, and they go down the street and they see signs. And I have to believe that half of the poorly constructed signs that Nancy Kay was referring to earlier are simply a result of people coming into town, seeing a lot of different types of signs, and seeing that we have no sign standards. So there's a lot of different stuff. They're placed a lot of different places, and it's going to take a real review of the sign code. I see your group really maybe recommending to the City Commission to address it as one of their goals.
And that's where I was leading with this, that
you
that
want to
maybe
get
we
that
need
addressed,
to...
and you're going to want to get Main Street Oregon City's input. You're going to want to get the Chamber's input, because that's their memberships that have the most to lose.
So maybe what I'm going here, Paul, and I'll get right to Tom, is that while you brought this to us at this point, it's up to this committee here what they want to do, but maybe we do need...
There was so much of it.
Right. Maybe
when
we
you
do
get
need to...
you get to this degree.
But maybe we need
up
to rewrite
until this time,
this.
I've never felt that it was that big of a problem, and then all of a sudden, we have no other candidates or issues except for one, and you see the degree of it based on just this one issue,
and
so it overflowed it.
We see it.
We
cycle.
I think even all of us have seen something, but where I was going with this, maybe we should, it's been brought up now as an issue, maybe we need to rewrite this and present to the city council, as they said, about signs in general for the next time, because I think that's where you're leading. We can't stop what's happened, whatever, on either side, but we can move forward with a stronger code in the future. I think that's what you were trying to achieve. I don't know, Paul.
If people understand that we have codes, and they just literally go out and disregard it, don't care, don't care. It's like a tree code, or it's a parking code, and you say, okay, you're a good guy, I'm going to let you park there. Somebody's going to make the determination. How we can't get into this? Just can't get into this. So you have to, if you have codes, and people know we have codes, and then you say, okay, I'm going to selectively determine how I enforce those codes. That just does not cut it. In some way, we've got to get around that. This is honesty and integrity, there's somewhere we've got to do something different, and I just believe that we went through an example where it was overflowed.
Let's go to Tom and wrap this up, and then see if this committee even what they want to do at this point. Tom?
Let me offer a couple of comments, because this is an area that is near and dear to my heart. I have spent over 20 years involved in the sign industry. I understand the value of signs, particularly to businesses. I understand also that a poor sign, or as Nancy described it, a shabby sign, is very detrimental to that person's business. A A-frame sign on 7th Street, even though the speed limit is 25 mile an hour, cannot be read sufficiently by a driver passing by at 25 miles an hour if the lettering is 3 inches high. It's impossible. Having said that, I tend to agree with Larry that this is not the appropriate reaction to something that has happened as a result of political battling going on, but rather I would like to do what Tony would like to do, and I would like to do what David Frazier would like to do, and that is get the attention of our city commission to place it on their goals when they meet for the retreat in January. And the reason I think that is so important is that this past Thursday, I attended a Friends of the Library Board annual luncheon. And during the course of that luncheon, Linda Van Haverbeck, whom some of us know, outgoing president, sitting directly across the table from Mayor Neely, got up before the group and stated that she had talked to someone recently who had been denied by a financial institution to refi their home based upon the fact that Oregon City is a blighted area. Now, I have a piece of property that at some point in the future I wish to sell. I do not want my potential buyers turned down by the financial community because we are a blighted city. Yet we go out of our way to portray that image every opportunity that we get. In the sign business, just in the period of time since I have left it, the number and types and styles of sign media to catch public attention has grown exponentially. It's no longer just pylon signs and monument signs and banners and A-frames. You now have window graphics on vehicles. You have vehicle wraps. You have floor graphics. You have all kinds of varied types of flag banners and so forth on sticks. You have probably close to 45 or 50 types of signs which are not even addressed in our code. And unless we talk to our citizens, our businesses, and the people involved in the sign industry to find out what direction we need to go with our signage ordinances, we're just trying to push water uphill, and it's not going to work. And until the City Commission decides to get behind it and make it one of their goals, we are going to continue to tell the financial community that we are a blighted city. If that's what we want, so be it.
Okay, thanks, Tom. We're at that point now where Paul, when you addressed it, you said you'd like to make a motion, but the motion wasn't made, so I'd like to know with this, from this group here. Oh, I'm sorry. Larry speaks first, and then we're going to get to that, what we're going to do, if anything.
Tom,
Larry.
you took my thunder, and I totally concur with what you said. That's the whole basis of the problem. And for us to go out now and yell at each other and have hard feelings over something. I was a helicopter pilot, and a forest fire would start, and they'd sit back and wonder what they're going to do about it. Well, by the time somebody thought we could do something about it, you can't put fire out. And I think that's just what's happened here. So let's just slap each other on the hand and say, don't do that anymore. Come back, start over again. Don't talk about putting somebody in jail, Paul. We don't volunteer here to go to jail. Thank you.
Is it the desire of this council to communicate with the City Commission how important we feel this issue is?
And I guess that's where I was leading to before Larry got it. Paul, do you want to withdraw? You didn't make a motion. You just said I'd like us to consider making a motion. Do we want to do something differently?
I let this council. I just think it was horrendous, and we have to make a change. And if this council would like to come up with a resolution, I'm willing to go along with this council's resolution. What we got to do something, because what we're doing is wrong.
So
and
maybe
it puts Nancy into a bind. It puts all of us into a bind. It's not we're not winning, and it's creating a blighted community. So we got to change something.
So while we can't do anything about the past necessarily, maybe we can for the future. And Tom, you probably had the best choice words there, and that is to stress our concern to the city about the new rules and involving the entire community about. Does that sound appropriate, Nancy and Nancy?
I'm sorry.
Does that sound appropriate if Tom makes some kind of a, I'm not sure if a motion or just a suggestion that we maybe by the next meeting come up with something to give to the city, saying we as neighborhoods would like them to look at the code a little bit more again in the near future? Is that?
I'd like to hear Tony's thoughts.
I was just going to say, because I believe that our goal setting with the City Commission is about January 22nd or 23rd or so. So it sounds like you may have another meeting before then, which would give you time to craft whatever language you wanted to bring back at your next January.
I'm comfortable making a proposal now for a motion
Okay.
Because I think it's important that it get on the agenda if it is not already on the goal agenda. That is presently being formed.
It's higher priority that way.
Well,
Nancy?
it will
Can I
be.
make-
It will be one that I take back every year.
Can I make a comment for just a moment? I think one of the things that might be important to know a little history. Back when we used to do signs and did pretty strict sign enforcement, it was easy to stay on top of it because there weren't a whole lot of signs out there. We had adequate staffing, but the city has grown, and so has the citizens' concerns and needs and what they expect us to respond to. I would get a call on a sign and go out to the property where it was at, and that person would then point at 10 other signs, which some are going to be you, your neighbors, businesses you go to. And then those people, you show up at their doors, and they each point to 10 more. So pretty soon, all we are doing is signs. So we really want to be careful and draft something that is going to work for everyone and protect your residential areas from being blighted, in addition to our commercial and mixed-use areas.
So you don't want
A portion of the approach that we've decided is the appropriate approach is education of the entire community is as important as changing the code. People will voluntarily adhere to regulations which they understand and are explained to them well. If you make no effort, they will continue to violate anything. I don't care if it's speeding laws, if it's illegal U-turns. If you don't try to educate them, you cannot expect them to obey whatever ordinances you have hidden in your books.
I was going to say, I'm sure the city doesn't want to be Scrooge, but probably Christmas tree signs for sale is probably illegal too, aren't
That's
they?
right. There's a lot of them out there.
One other point I was going to make, when I was working over in West Lynn, it was interesting, even the West Lynn Parks and Recreation signs they'd put out for events were picked up by the city code enforcement and brought back to the city hall. They wouldn't even allow their own Parks and Rec to put out the signs.
I was surprised yesterday upon driving up Singer Hill to see that in the public right-of-way, less than 25 yards from this front door of this building, is another illegal sign advertising some singles.com or something for Oregon City. Singles.
You had a quick
now,
question?
I would think people walking out the front door of the building might walk over there and remove it, but perhaps not.
You had a quick question?
Specifically about political signs, and that should be something easier to contain
Unfortunately, under the Oregon Supreme Court, a jurisdiction cannot regulate or base regulation on signs based on content. The bigger what that means is that we can't single out political signs in the right of way. It is signs, regardless of what they say. I cannot consider if it says elect me or if it says date me. They are, to me, the same. They are a sign. So that's where it gets difficult, is that content part of the political sign. So what that means is that we can't single out a certain class, a certain type. So if we're going to do this, we have to do it across the board for all of them. And that's where the difficulty arises with the current code that we have that looks like last updated in about 1994. So it's been an issue that we need to address, and it needs to become a priority to move that forward and do it in a comprehensive way. Because I agree with Mr. O'Brien that through education, you probably get 60 or 70% of self-compliance at that point, and then it makes it a lot easier on the code enforcement side to address the remaining, hopefully 30 or less %.
Your last question, so we can move on.
this particular issue just set a precedent.
Come up front. Please come up front.
Well, she's just got a quick question.
It just set a precedent for political free-for-all in the future, for all political races.
And I think we're going to address that now by Tom making a motion to how we're concerned enough about it that it's going to go to them for their workshop. So, Tom, why don't you...
I would like to make a motion that the Citizen Involvement Council send a message to our city commissioners that unless something is done soon relative to our signage ordinances in the city, that we will continue to be viewed upon as a blighted city by the financial institutions.
Don't suppose you could rephrase that?
Can we modify that, to just say that the CIC would encourage them to more closely review the sign ordinances?
I think we have to understand why it is important to the city.
Could that be passed by Tony, that part, rather than actually be in the wording? I understand your concern there, yeah. And not just...
I think that has to be somewhere in the wording, William.
Doesn't that incur a judgment call as to...
That's what's exactly happening. The financial institutions are making a judgment call against our city and our citizens, and I'm upset about it.
Well, I've heard one comment about that, and I don't know if that blanketly means all institutions are doing that.
He's made the motion, so we can vote on his motion the way he's phrased it, I guess.
I'll second it.
I'll read it back from the recording.
Okay, before we move forward, I guess it's now discussion. Ray?
Yeah, and it's a real quick one. I just wanted to make sure that everybody, when you think about it, whatever you're on politically or not, I'm kind of where Larry is. I'm just in the middle, whatever, let other people think about it. But taking what you said and then what you said, that regardless of what side you're on, when somebody puts a sign out, even though it's irritating and stuff, it means they're actually thinking. It means that they're actually proactive, and it's actually however you think about it, there's a little positiveness to that. So I just, I didn't put a sign out or anything, but just if we can kind of jump on that we educate, but also keep in mind that there's a little positiveness to the fact that people want to be involved.
Sometimes people don't think at all. So Tom has a motion that he put on the floor with his wording, and I believe at this point we should probably call the question on that motion that he's put on the floor. Would you kind of paraphrase it back so people understand again?
That the CIC write a letter to the City Commission saying that the city code regarding signage needs to be improved because it is turning the city into a blighted area. The current code is.
Is that kind of what you said, Tom?
That was not what I meant to say, if that's the way it's interpreted.
Well,
let me restate.
Okay.
I believe the Citizens Involvement Council should write a letter to the City Commission asking them at their retreat this January to set as one of their goals a review and education of the current sign ordinance in order to come up with one that will no longer portray the city to the outside world as a blighted city.
I think that's clear. So thank you.
I'll go with it.
Okay, so with that being the wording, that will be...
Seconded?
I second that.
Okay, you second that one. Okay, so any other discussion? Let's vote on that recommendation to send to the City Commission for their retreat. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
I'm opposed, just because of the wording.
Okay.
The concept I like.
And those abstaining?
Abstain.
Okay.
Positive.
So the majority rules.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even if it's illegal.
All right. With that being done, let's go back to the approval of minutes from the last, under new business, as long as we're on there. Quickly, the offices here are closed.
Thanks, staff, for...
Yes, thank you, staff, for being here and the support. Under new business also, with January 2nd being the next Monday, the first Monday, and the offices are closed, but more importantly, that's the Rose Bowl, and all Duck fans will be in front of their TVs or Pasadena. So we're going to suggest to the committee that we move it to the following Monday.
I think we should have it on a second.
Pardon?
I think we should hold it on a second. No waiting.
Quack, quack.
Tell them I'll be the same,
Screen TV?
Pardon? Yeah, that's the big screen TV here.
Yeah.
So I'm asking my fellow officers, or to Chris, that we can't hold it here anyway if the offices are closed, correct?
Correct.
So we have to hold it on January 9th.
There's
Go
always a
Ducks.
parking lot.
Okay.
What is the date then?
January 9th, Monday, January 9th.
Do you have in here?
It's not, because it was just brought up to my attention, and I just thought of, I'm hoping, my birthday's New Year's Eve, and I'm hoping my brothers send me to Pasadena. I won't be back.
Go Ducks.
That's right. And go Tom. No. Okay, under approval of minutes, Secretary William Gifford.
I got these minutes out last week, and hope that everyone has had a chance to take a look at them. And I would like to receive a motion to get these approved as written. Anyone want to make
Can
that
I make a
motion?
motion?
No, you can't make a motion.
What can I do?
I move that they be accepted as written.
Ooh, thank you.
Second? Anybody?
Don.
Anybody seconding?
Yes, Don seconded.
Oh, Don did, okay.
I'd like to suggest one change in there. Under roundtable,
Okay.
Mr. Conkle is not Tone Conkle.
That's right. He's not.
Is that your
That's
rapper
ton.
name? That's your rapper name, right?
And there was another change made. Did you get that other change in there about the date of the?
I took your the last one you sent me, because I was gone.
Yeah, it has a 12th in there.
Yes, on where it says Scott Young spoke at continuing pedestrian district. The next TVNA meeting, December 12th, is actually the 14th.
If I'm not mistaken, the name Van Haverbeck has a capital H in it.
Every now and then.
Thank you.
Cash the check whether it's there or not.
That's a good stand.
I refuse to cash it if it doesn't have my apostrophe.
So, Steve, would you modify your motion to accept them as modified?
Accept as modified.
And does the second accept that?
Who seconded it?
Don.
Don did. Did you accept this? Okay. All right. Call for the vote. All those in favor of approving these minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay, approved. Moving on to the next one. Under old business, do you have an update for us on the Clackamas Park?
Yeah, but I need to concur with.
Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee.
William and I appeared in front of the Parks and Recreation Committee.
Thank you, Nancy.
With our plan on the Willamette.
Willamette.
I lived in
Colorado
Colorado a lot.
Willamette.
That's my Colorado side.
You from Chicago?
You guys are tearing me up. We met in front of those folks, and we were approved to go on with our parking in the RV park in the park at Willamette Park. And
Clackamas Park.
Clackamas Park. I was looking for that word.
Park.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
there you go.
It's still Alzheimer's. Anyway, it was unanimously approved, and I looked for support and help from you guys to get her done. And what we're going to try and do is get the overnight camping to comply with state regulations and rules, and then we'll go on and try and get the funding to build an appropriate handicap-accessible fishing area, whether it be on the Clackamas River or on the Willamette River. Thank you.
Okay. Ask Nancy anything. She knows everything.
Okay.
Ask OCPW.
So, I've got some handouts, just because I always like to do pictures and illustrations, and someday I'd like to write a book.
That's it?
No candy?
I think you should. That's what
Oh, more coming.
And so what I just wanted to do is share with you our excitement about going to Two-Way Main Street.
That is cool.
It appears as though we got through it it went very smoothly. Now, who's to say one night when we've got people staying too late at the bars that we might have a little incident down there with somebody not knowing which way they're supposed to be going. But what's really fun is you can see the business is so much better now without all that deep parking.
Oh, cool.
But and not to be too nervous, the parking spaces that were marked they're the standard 23-foot long parking space, which clearly are very long for many cars. And the long-term plan is to remove all those ticks, so we'll just be able to squeeze in as many people as possible in the parking areas.
So they aren't going to have, what do they call them, hockey sticks? When you said the ticks.
Oh, the ticks. Well, they're T's and L's.
T's and L's. Oh,
Right.
okay.
We'll have the L's at the end, but not the T's in between. So that way we can fit in as many cars as possible. And
Hopefully.
soon we'll have the solar-powered meters in down there too, but there's been a delay on the order.
Nancy, are there any plans to restore the streetcar tracks?
To restore the streetcar tracks, not in this project. Oh, isn't that cool? That's what
Yes.
I passed these pictures out because there's it always was two-way, and we just took a little hiatus from it, and now we're back. And it's so interesting because this is taken from the exact same location. You can recognize some of the buildings.
No left turn.
And then so then on Wednesday of this week, we are going to have a kickoff meeting for the next project on Main Street.
When is that?
Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. at Caulfield House. And we've invited certainly all the Main Street businesses, and we asked Chris to send out the email to this group as well, because you may know people that are interested in being involved in that meeting. But we'll be talking about construction of the next phase, which is sidewalk and lighting improvements between 5th and 10th. I know it seems like we were just down there for a bunch, but the projects have come in different funding packages, and as we've acquired money, we're adding phases to the Main Street projects. And that is expected to be completed before the bridge opens. So when the bridge opens, we'll have a real spruced up downtown, and we'll start seeing more traffic come across down there again. And hopefully, for the long term, it'll be just a great way to get started.
Nancy, I'm just curious as to why we are not doing the section between 99 and 6th. It seems like, we've kind of isolated one block there where we've said, no, you don't deserve anything nice.
We are. We're starting, but we're not touching the corner of 99 and Main Street. But we will be replacing where the sidewalks need to be replaced. We'll be putting in new street lights. We'll be putting in some street trees. We're going all the way from 5th to 10th, except for the corner of 5th Street, because if we did the corner at 5th Street, we were going to have to make improvements on all four corners of that intersection, and it was going to send our budget over the top. So does that make sense?
Well,
Okay, so we will
Not
be
really.
starting one property down from 5th and McLaughlin.
one property.
Yeah.
So at the optometrist shop.
Yes, we won't be doing the optometrist shop.
And we're not going to do anything in front of the
505
wheel.
on the wheel.
The wheel.
No.
Yeah,
But the 505, starting at the
yeah, right.
The 505.
Yeah.
You're on your own.
And
For a long time.
But there was a specific reason, Tom, and that was because if we approach that intersection, there's a lot of improvements that need to be made.
So if improvements later happen across the way on the mill property, then at that point in time, the budget would be,
Well, the developer might do it, or we might have another grant, or.
okay,
But it was-
all right.
Wouldn't that make that property more appealing to something coming along? To have the infrastructure laid out so that someone might say, well, wouldn't that be a nice place to put something there?
Right, and that's something that maybe we'd
As an
want to look
investment.
for, yeah.
So if the city does
Get ODOT to do
something
it.
at that corner, they have to do all four corners, but if the developer does, he doesn't?
Well, I think I'm not sure about that. I think ours had to do with federal funding and American Disability Act requirements and those kinds of things. So. Okay, so then the next thing is I handed out a set of pictures, and we've reached a very exciting milestone with the jug handle in that we've completed the foundation for one of the ends of the bridge. And maybe that's not so exciting to everybody as it is to the project team, but this is a big deal. We've got the pilings are in, the wall is set, and now we'll be, even the contractors are so excited about this because we're really getting into the structure of that new bridge now. So I thought these pictures were just told a story that you might enjoy looking at and
Is it on
sharing
schedule?
with others.
Is it on schedule now?
Yeah, it's on schedule.
Great, Nancy, I like it.
And the 4-day closure is still scheduled for March, and it's going to probably be towards the end of March. after spring break. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is just that as you've looked around town, you've probably seen, at least downtown, the holiday decorations are up. The street division did that in the last couple of weeks. And we had the Christmas tree lighting the other night. It was great weather, good turnout. So
Are those legal?
this is the fun stuff we do in this town, right?
Are those legal, or are they signs for Merry Christmas?
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to get that subject.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Okay. All righty, moving right along. Committee reports, Land Use Committee, anything to report? Okay, let's go to roundtable. Let's start with Ray, and then we'll work our way around.
Hi. Hillendale neighborhood, doing good. And trying to think of anything. Safeway's open. That's been pretty exciting. It's always busy, and it's a very wonderful store. And I've noticed a couple times I've been there, very great customer service, and that's really giving the other businesses a run for the money. Coming up in January, doing the 2020 event, which helps the 1190 KX Kids Fund. So that's at the Pioneer Center again, January 15th. People can look up that 2020event.org. It helps helps get it helps the Lions Club too. I'm doing a partnership.
Helps kids with glasses.
Kids with glasses and hearing aids.
Don Wright with Barclay Hills Neighborhood Association. About the two biggest things that we've had, well, three, one's still pending, but two of them that got concluded were taking care of some residents who had some pretty vicious dogs that were getting out and attacking other dogs and threatening kids, and we got them shut down. So we feel good about that.
Good.
The one that's pending is we're still in a study situation with the left turn, right turn, up turn, down turn at Barclay Hills, and what's that other? Huh? No, what's that other little street across the way?
Oh, Mountain View?
Mountain View. The resident came in there with her concerns about the right-left off that one. So it's a very complex issue. I'm sure, as Nancy could tell you, if you had another 20 hours. But it's in the works, and probably something needs to be done there. So we got that going. That's it.
Trying to think of anything that I have. I pass.
Howard could probably talk about the Kenema Neighborhood Association had a neighborhood meeting. We had ODOT come to the meeting, and we had a chance to talk with ODOT about future plans for restriping Highway 99 and our neighborhood, giving them full acceptance to that. We had a discussion with Metro about their plans in the natural area. They want to, are moving to a master plan to enhance Oaks and Madrona and the prairie feel of the bluff, and with that, they want to cut 200 approximately Douglas fir in the historic district. We want greater discussion. In fact, we'd like that turned over to the Natural Resources Committee of Oregon City to do a secondary review on that. And then on our Kenema Neighborhood Children's Park, continues to come together. They've got the basketball court, asphalt down. They've got grasses coming up. They're in the stage of building the potty, so we will have a flushing toilet to go with all the young kids there. So when mothers have a kid that has to go potty, we'll have a place for them. And things seem to be coming together, and I'm keeping the sign level down in Kenema.
Paul, you guys have done a tremendous job with that Kenema Park, and it's to be respected.
Kathy?
You too.
Where'd you go?
Tom O'Brien, Hazel Grove Wrestling Farms neighborhood. I have two things I would like to report. At our last meeting, Kathy Hogan was reelected as the chair of our association, and I was chosen to continue on the CIC along with Kathy. The other thing I have to report is not in the association or our neighborhood per se, but rather in our citywide neighborhood. Tuesday of last week, there were a number of individuals from all over Clackamas County, but primarily county individuals and city individuals from Oregon City as well as West Lynn, a few people from the unincorporated area along McLaughlin Boulevard, who got together at the invitation of the Clackamas County Tourism Board, I believe it's called, to determine as best we could, or at least to discuss the perceived needs of the bicycling community as it relates to particularly our two communities, West Lynn and Oregon City. It was an all-day session with multiple presentations and discussions, several planning processes to workshop us through understanding the importance that we put as a group on things, rating things in terms of prioritization, and establishing goals for achievable things that could, in a short-term 1 to 4 year time frame, be done to enhance or improve both bicycle safety and bicycle transportation issues in general. So you'll probably be hearing more of that sort of thing. I think it's important when we have the opportunity to better our community and make it more user-friendly for particularly outside groups. Their focus was primarily coming in, I think, on bicycle tourism. I made some introductory comments. Each of us were asked to introduce ourselves, and I got into a little bit of a exchange, shall we say, with one of the county folks who claimed that the motel tax was the perfect tax. And at the first break, I shared with him my views as to how that was not really a perfect tax. But I do think we have to move forward. We have to make our bicyclists safer, whether they're our children or whether they are adults. Unfortunately, people my age, for the most part, are not big users of bicycles. But I did suggest that if they wanted to have the support and the backing of the entire communities, that they announce future meeting agendas and activities, at least at the senior centers, so that the seniors are plugged in to what their efforts are and what they're trying to do with basically taxpayer dollars. So.
Yeah, and I would just like to add that one of the sponsors of this is Travel Oregon.
That's what I was going to say.
And
Too late.
the focus is how can bicycle tourism be an economic development tool for the county and Oregon City and West Lynn. And it was great to see you there, Tom. And we'll see. This is the first of many meetings that they have throughout the county. With
You
other
can go to the
cities.
county website and you'll see where the other ones are scheduled. And even though they may be to specific other areas such as Canby and Malala or Happy Valley and so forth, all the communities throughout the county are going to be involved in the process over the next few months. And you're welcome to attend any of those to give your input and your thoughts, because it's going to be the consideration or the combination of all those entities at their individual meetings that bring about the final decisions on what current monies could be spent for to improve the situation.
It was really, they had a lot of information on how much of how much people spend if they go bicycling in your area. And there were some slides that were just amazing, how much money people spend on recreational stuff, which is great. But it seemed like it's an area that the county wants to.
One of the things that
what
Mike
they
would
can
be
get
happy
from
to
it.
hear is that evidently bicyclists, and I was not aware of this, but serious bicyclists like Nancy need lots of carbs. So beer qualifies, pizza qualifies, anything that's in high carbs.
I was going to say, how do they
We want to identify those businesses that offer lots of carbs with a special, perhaps, sticker or something on their window or door
See, Mike,
welcoming
you got to have a bike
welcoming
rack out there.
bikers to their establishment.
I feel like we should have invited Sam Adams here to talk about bikes too. But
505.
anyway,
Sam Adams Brewery?
no. So You've given up your bike for your skateboard? That's what you're using now? Okay, Mike. Sorry.
Downtown, a lot of business owners are kind of catalyzed just by the activities downtown and current events, and many are aware of downtown organization, but many aren't aware that they are in a neighborhood, and that I show up here. And so there might be more voices for downtown with some of the lessees, and rather than just the lessors. Christmas tree lighting was very successful, a lot of fun, a lot of turnout, and also lamenting the loss of a stalwart downtown business, Napa, which just shuttered their doors. So we're,
Did they?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So you can shop for Napa in Milwaukee.
Napa?
Bummer. Yeah. So.
Okay. Larry.
Caulfield neighborhood has a complaint with the high school kids again, Chris. Okay. And if we can get on that, the culprit is a maroon-colored Escalade. And I would like to stay new. Well, we don't know. She looks pretty old.
You have a license plate?
No, we'll get it though, because we know where it lives.
Just kidding. Okay.
About 80 miles an hour, and that was no exaggeration.
Wow.
Tom, could I have another moment, too?
Sure. Tom.
I had a hard time doing that in my Porsche.
Just as an awareness factor for all the neighborhoods, we had an incident occur this past Thursday in our area that I think you need to be aware of, and that is we had a active car prowl. Two individuals, their vehicle was identified through some videotapes as being a either white or light-colored pickup truck with a toolbox in the bed. They prowled the neighborhood on foot from between 2 a.m. and about 4:35 a.m. and identified their targets, and then one individual made the quick smash and grabs while the other one drove the vehicle to pick them up on the run. If they're doing it in our neighborhood, I would suggest you look out for them in your neighborhood. We were fortunate that one of our neighbors had three video cameras out there and was able to count the number of times that particular pickup drove up and down the street 6 times within that 2.5 hour period. So they're out there, they're active, be alert.
Larry wasn't done, I'm sorry.
No problem. The other real tragedy was the girls lacrosse team lost 30 of their wreaths that they'd sold for a benefit, and unfortunately that house is next door to mine, and we got a lot of volunteers in there to do wreath work, and it came out okay, but it's just hard to believe that can happen in our community. It's just terrible.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
As long as we're on depressing news.
Well, we are blighted,
neighborhoods. We had somebody come through our neighborhood a couple Saturdays ago, and in the middle of the night, and took everyone's pumpkins that were on their front porches, still left over, and 4 or 5 of them, smashed all of them on everybody's front porches everywhere. So it was a mess when you got home the next day. I was at the coast. But it's just a mess. And it's just a bunch of prowling kids, again, because it was in the middle of the night. And more depressing than that was when I was in Reno last week, and I filling out my application, and they asked where Oregon City was. And it's Oregon. Oh, they have a city named Oregon City in Oregon? I couldn't believe that.
What can you expect from a blighted city, Tom?
It's blighted. You should see Reno if you want to talk about blight. That's empty. Go ahead, William.
Park Place, Hillendale specifically, I think we have our next meeting January 3rd, first Tuesday in January as well. And we're having a steering committee meeting tomorrow night. And Wednesday night, not in Hillendale, but Wednesday night down at the Museum of the Oregon Territories, there's a special presentation on Pearl Harbor. I think the exhibit opens at 5 or 5:30, and then they're going to have a speaker at 7 o'clock. So that looks like it could be a really interesting program. That's down at the Museum of the Oregon Territory on Wednesday, December 7th. Go figure. And also, I wanted to express condolences. Last month, we witnessed the passing of Mike Wasner, a fantastic artist in this community and a very powerful member of Main Street. And he organized a lot of the things that happened on Main Street, First City celebrations and the First Friday art walks and all of those things. And Mike will be missed by this community.
Nancy?
I have nothing else.
Chris?
The only thing I can say, along with Tom, is make sure that you're not leaving things in your car. You know, don't be leaving your purses, your wallets, your computers, anything. Take them in the house. Make sure your cars are locked. If you can get your car in the garage, park it in the garage. You know, and keep an eye out. And when you see things that are out of the ordinary, you know, call the non-emergency number. Because remember, between 9 and 3, we have an overlap shift, so we have more officers on, so we have more opportunity to be out in those neighborhoods. So. And also, you know, when you're shopping, you know, be aware of your surroundings too, and don't be leaving your packages on site in your car because
That time of year.
they're gonna smash and grab. So just be cognizant of that. That's it.
Tony?
Tom, this might be a good time for maybe to tell people how to start neighborhood watches or who to call, since it's all coming to the surface.
Yeah, it is.
Currently, right now, we do not have an officer in charge of Neighborhood Watch, but the police is working on that, Lieutenant Nunes. So if we do have any neighborhoods that are interested, they can either call Lieutenant Nunes or myself. But we still do need to get an officer
Dedicated to that.
dedicated and trained to do Neighborhood Watch. And just one other thing. In the past, Rivercrest Neighborhood Association has taken care of the Easter egg hunt
Yes.
at
Yeah.
Rivercrest, and they have opted out of doing that. And I had originally thought CIC might take that over, but I changed my mind. And I've taken it over for police. So
Oh,
police is
okay.
gonna
Oh, that's
take over the
nice.
Easter egg hunt, so,
Give away
in
little
conjunction
badges
with
in
the
each
city.
egg.
So it should be good.
So does that mean that the Chiefs Advisory Group is involved in that?
Yes.
What kind of prizes?
Andrea Schmerbach is already.
Oh,
back
yes.
home,
Well,
so-
count me in.
Okay.
I brought the colored handcuffs. I think you see a kid
I'll
catching.
eat some candy if
stealing
that
somebody's
helps.
eggs.
Hey, where's my candy?
Okay, let's move on. Tony? Okay, Rochelle? Rachel?
Just speaking of shopping, and ask that as you're doing your Christmas shopping, to try and keep your dollars in Oregon City. We've got plenty of businesses that can take care of all of your needs. We've got restaurants and gift shops and service providers and hair salons. And there's really no reason to leave the city and as you plan your holiday parties because consider all of our local restaurants as well.
And gift certificates.
Yeah,
And gift certificates for local businesses.
absolutely. Yep.
It was interesting. American Express did that. Did you see that? It was on their website. If you bought local, they credited you $25 of Saturday Go. And so I looked up all the shops in Oregon City, and you got a $25 credit once if you shopped local.
What if you use 3 American Express cards?
Did you got $25 3 times?
If you go out to the Chamber's website, OregonCity.org, there's actually a link for a business directory. So if you want to go through and see what all we have, it's just all right there, and those are all Chamber members.
It was restaurants and shops, so it was cool.
Star Vista neighborhood has their December meeting at the Ainsworth House.
Oh, excuse me. Would you please use... Yes, thank you very much.
Tower Vista neighborhood will have their December 14th, next Wednesday, meeting at the Ainsworth House, which is already being decorated for the holidays. It should be a good gathering, and that's all. Everything else is good.
You came all the way
For
up
coming
here
to our
for that.
meeting, by the
Say
way.
something more. Just
Thanks for coming to our meeting, by the way.
You're welcome. You can come to ours too.
Howard, anything to say? Okay. Young lady? Okay. I guess with that, it's the close of the meeting. Are those free samples to take home, those pipes over there?
Yeah, guy needs a good sewer pipe.
I could think of somebody to give that to for Christmas. Okay, that's the close of the meeting. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here.